Hello and welcome to the Doomsy McDoomscroller show, a philosophical science fiction podcast that features refreshingly heretical complaints about the news and social media. I am your fictional host, Doomsy, and sometimes the show's writers have me referring to myself in the third person and breaking the fourth wall. This is not a normal show, and Doomsy is not a normal Gen Y guy, as the backstory has me lost somewhere, somewhen, in space-time, perhaps another galaxy, maybe another dimension in the multiverse. I don't know. Suffice it to say that I've been away from Earth for so long now that Doomsy is effectively no longer part of the dominant culture there where you are. The planet that you're on, the dominant culture there. And I don't sugarcoat my criticism of the culture to which 8 billion of you belong, soon to be 9 billion. The farmers / pyramid builders of both East and West alike. I lump all of you warmongers in together because that's my perspective. For example, look at this headline today. If I can press the right button, I will bring this article up in my visor. Although I'm broadcasting a video channel in this stream, in this feed. I don't know if you're getting it. So if there's something I need to describe, I will do that. But this is a podcast, so you don't need video. I'm going to read this to you. This is from Chicken Noodle News. For first known time in public, Putin calls fighting in Ukraine a war. For first known time in public, Putin calls fighting in Ukraine a war. Okay. I guess now it's official, right? Actual war. Of course it's a war. Of course he can do this. He can, at first it's a special military operation, right? And if you're in Russia and you criticize that, or if you call the Putin's special military operation, if you call it a war, you're going to jail, right? I mean, cage time for you. That's all you civilized people can do, right? If there's an offense broken, a law broken, cage each other. Put people in cages. That's all you got. It's the only way you can deal with anything. So in Russia, if you called Putin's special military operation, called it a war, you're doing jail time. You're going in a cage. But of course, it's a war. He called it a war. And he knew he could do that. He knew he could escalate to a war. Everyone expected it, right? That's what you all do. You're a bunch of warmongers, 8 billion warmongers, waging war versus Earth, versus each other. Wars all the time. Wars on poverty, wars on drugs, the war on drugs. War on terror. Got a war against an emotion. A war on terror. How about a war on melancholy? Where's that war? Somewhere, I'm sure. It's being fought. Because that's what you do. You fight wars. All the time. So for first First time in public. Putin calls fighting in Ukraine a war. Well, he had to eventually, right? So he knew he could get away with it for a while. You know, if it's a special military operation, he's got no way out of that, right? I mean, how's he going to get out of that? So, you know, it's got to be a war now. So now he's wartime president, I guess, right? Wartime president. You know, he's finally, I guess, caught up to speed with the rest of the world. Yeah, buddy, your invasion and all the killing, all the murders. Yeah, call that a war. Call that a war, why don't you? Now, everybody else was calling it a war. You know, when you kill a lot of people, you know, generally, that's a war. When is it not a war? When do you never have to call it a war? I bet you know. I bet you, you know, Doomsy. I was raised on Earth, in America, actually. So I'm familiar with what you get in school, what they're giving you, what they're feeding you. So all kinds of wars in U.S. history class, right? I mean, it's a bunch of wars. But what war was never called a war? What war in U.S. history encompassed the death of dozens of millions? At least a dozen million. Women and children. And yet, not called a war. Nope, it's not a war. And why wasn't it called a war? How did... And I'm not picking on... I'm not picking on the good old US of A. I'm not. I just happen to know this story. I know this history well because, you know, I was raised. Before I divorced and separated myself from civilized culture by basically getting myself lost somewhere in another galaxy. You know, before that happened, I was raised in the USA, so I'm talking about what I know, basically. But you know, it could be said of any civilized nation. So what was never called a war? Even though a dozen million women and children were killed. Do you know? Can you think of it? Can you think of it? You know, Putin's calling this a war. He finally gets to, you know, he's going to call this a war. He's calling it a war. It's no longer a special military operation. And he's going to call it a war because he wants to deal with it that way. It's going to serve his purposes. You know, same kind of killing. But what was never called a war in the USA? Even though there had been wars fought, you know, in the U.S. history book pages, all throughout, hundreds of other pages, not called a war. Oh, that was, you don't remember? That was the eradication of indigenous peoples and bison. Yeah, that's what that was. Not called a war, though, was it? It wasn't called a war because, well, bison, you know, who cares about them, right? They're not humans. They're not people. And the people that were people weren't quite people according to your culture. according to civilized culture, according to you people, the hunters aren't farmers. And if you're not farming, you're not really living the way humans should live, right? Time for you to go. It wasn't called a war. You know what your culture called? You know what your culture calls the death of a dozen million women and children? You know what your culture calls those deaths in just what? The span of a century it happened? Century or so? It's not a war, according to your culture. It's progress. That's progress, yeah. They weren't farmers. But when farmers wage war versus other farmers, when pyramid builders go to war versus other pyramid builders, yeah, then it's legit. Then we got to have calls for diplomacy. We can't be having that. But you civilized folk, well, there's not. Where are they now? Been going on for 10,000 years, so eradication nearly complete. So you just don't see it all that much anymore. So yeah, war. Yeah. Look at this. Do you remember this from history class? I put this in the Google search. The search machine. Manifest destiny. Do you remember that? Manifest destiny. You want a translation for that? Something that makes sense? I mean, if you aren't quite all brushed up on your American history and your U.S. history, let me help you out with the translation for manifest destiny. Okay? Here's the translation. Jihad. Jihad. Holy war. But no, you can't use those terms. You won't. No one's going to compel you to. Because that dozen million women and children, they weren't farmers. They were hunter-gatherers. So they were tribal people. They weren't building pyramids. The vast majority of them never knew anything of a socio hierarchy. Never. So they don't count, right? According to your culture. That's your culture. So Putin calls this a war. Look, manifest destiny. Yeah, let's read I remember this from high school, but here you go. Manifest destiny. This is from history.com. Top results on the search page here. Manifest destiny, a phrase coined in 1845, is the idea that the United States is destined by God, its advocates believed, to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. So how is that not jihad? That's holy war. Oh, W-A-R. Not anywhere in there, is it? Nope. No, Putin can call that a war, what he's doing in Ukraine. He's going to finally fess up, right? It's official now. Russia's waging war. And look at this. Look at this. Well, don't look at this. This is a podcast. You can get the video feed, like I said, but look. Listen to this, I should say. Okay, this is the Google search results page. Yeah, I know, crazy, right? I got Wi-Fi. I don't know, I'm a billion light years from Earth. Maybe a billion light decades or something. Yeah, but I got Wi-Fi. And it's hooked up to the EarthNet or whatever. I'm getting what you're getting. Okay, so people also ask, what is manifest destiny and what did it cause? What is manifest destiny and what did it cause? Okay, here's an answer from Khan Academy, U.S. History. So I figure some history professor wrote this. Manifest destiny, simply put, was the belief that Americans had the divine right to settle all throughout America until the Pacific Ocean. This was caused by Americans feeling that it was the will of God that they tame the wilderness and civilize the West and remake it in the image of the 13 colonies. I don't know. Maybe a professor didn't write that because that sounds weird to say. Until the Pacific Ocean. But Manifest Destiny, it was all about the westward expansion. From the Atlantic going all the way, it was supposed to go to the Pacific. That's what I remember. I mean, this is spot on except for the weird grammar, or maybe I'm just not. Maybe my English has gotten a little bit rusty here here on the other side of the universe. I don't know when I'm going to get back to Earth. It's going to take me 20, 30 years. What's going to be left by the time I get there, huh? So let's go back to this page here. What is manifest destiny? What did it cause? So we just read this paragraph. Nowhere in there does it say war. What is manifest destiny and what did it cause? So we're just not going to mention genocide. Genocide? We're just going to gloss over that. Just sweep that under the rug. It's not a war. Come on. You got, chicken noodle news here. The C, the N, the N. For first known time in public, Putin calls fighting in Ukraine a war. No, he can call that a war. Everybody else is calling it a war. Thanks for catching up, Putin. Yeah, but you know what you know what you don't call a war? Is when farmers are killing hunters. That's not a war. It's okay. The hunters aren't really people according to your culture. Your culture, I'm talking 8 billion of you. The 8 billion of you who are caught in a stampede. And yeah, but I think this show's got no audience whatsoever. But if anybody does, I think the vast majority of people who listen would go, well, why didn't you just leave then? Ha ha, you moron! I've already left. I'm Doomsy McDoomscroller. Okay, I'm not even in the Milky Way galaxy. Sometimes I have these weird flashes, these hyperspatial quantum entanglement jumps that put me, and sometimes it looks like Earth, but it's like a different dimension, some other era, some other time. But I'm not in one of those phases right now. I'm just galaxies away. So yeah, I'm out of it. I am out of it. I'm free at last. I'd like to get back. I miss my friends and family. I'd like to get back to Earth, but yeah, not part of it anymore. But hey, I'm not telling you that it's going to be easy. I'm just saying that it's simple. It's a simple thing. Okay, you're caught in a stampede. You're caught in a stampede. You can't just stop running in a stampede. You'll get trampled to death. You got to start. First, you got to start mentioning to everyone else in the stampede that you're actually in a stampede. So you can all kind of start hitting the brakes and slowing down together before you get to that cliff. Now, that's pretty simple. Maybe it's not so easy. But, waging war all the time. War. And we're talking about I think this Putin POS yesterday. And if you listened yesterday, I don't know. You may have heard me say we don't need millionaires. So of course we don't need billionaires. But if you're thinking that Doomsy is suggesting some type of new kind of tax and spend, some type of economy, no, you need to listen more. Listen a little closer, because there ain't no fixing it. There ain't no economic fix within your culture. Your culture sucks. Your culture is doomed. Okay, a sucks is a value judgment. All right, so we don't need to go there. Let's just stick to the facts. Your culture is doomed. That's what's necessarily doomed. Humanity, not necessarily. So, Doomsy's got good news in that. Doomsy's always got good news in that. Well, maybe I won't always have good. I mean, if I make it back, if you keep going with civilized culture and I make it back, 20, 30 years from now, there won't be, there's not going to be, there's not going to be much left. There's not going to be much left for me to enjoy as an earthling on Earth. So, talking about this yesterday, this Putin, we don't need, we never needed kings. The only way to have a tyrannical king is to first have a king. Any king can become tyrannical, right? I mean, you think that's a problem? But Doomsy is not suggesting that this is fixable within your culture. You think things aren't fair in the US of A, the bastion of capitalism? Things aren't fair there for most people? It's not fair? Well, okay, then you got communism on the other side of your globe, right? How's that working out for people? Look, no matter what kind of ism, communism, capitalism, socialism, Marxism, whatever ism, no matter what kind of ism you use for an economy and civilized culture, you get the pyramid. You get the three stratifications with all the sub-levels in between. You get the royals at the top, you get the nobles in the middle, and all the peasants and commoners are at the bottom of the socioeconomic hierarchy. You always get that. Always, 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 always. Always. So there's no solution economically, and we'll run into that here in a moment with abandoning the culture. You can abandon the culture. You just need to find other cultures to be in. You can do that. There was many cultures before civilized culture. Lots of good things about those cultures. Number one, sustainability. But they had music and fashion and dinner parties, and they had arts and crafts. So, all right, let's move off Putin. But I'm betting that right now you aren't going to find a take on this like Doomsy's. I mean, not that I'm anything special. I'm not. I'm just an average idiot. He got himself lost on the other side of the universe. But, my perspective This helped me. Yeah, and I'm willing to bet, I know, in fact, there's a million doomsies walking around Earth. They're just few and far between. But what's a million compared to 8 billion? You know, it's a small percentage. But you know, if you're thinking Doomsy's suggesting that you can just stop, you can't. You can't. You'll get trampled. You have to start talking before you start doing something different. Culture is what people do. It's not what they have. And what civilized people do is wage war. Manifest destiny. Yeah, it's not called war, it's called progress. Your culture kills 12 million women and children, and that's progress, according to your culture. That's because they weren't farmers. Look at this right here. Well, look at this. Again, listen to this. I'm just scrolling. This is a story from today, or story from yesterday. Let's read this headline here. Former prison guard charged with illegal possession of hamburgers. Former prison guard charged with illegal possession of hamburgers. This is where? Alabama. A former North Alabama prison guard was arrested Tuesday, now faces a litany of charges, including promoting contraband in a state prison. The forbidden items? Hamburgers. You civilized folk in your prisons. Prisons. Especially there in the US of A. You got 5% of the world's population, approximately, but 25% thereabouts. 25% of the world's prisoners. There in your land of the free. Pathetic. Civilized culture is pathetic. Oh, that's all you got. These prisons. You know. Okay, we were just talking about genocide. Genocide isn't a war, according to your culture. It's not a war according to your culture if you're killing millions of hunters. If you're killing non-farmers, that's okay. You never have to call that a war. Putin has to eventually get around to calling what he's doing a war. But, the manifest destiny, jihad, that holy war that went from Atlantic to Pacific. Yeah, you don't gotta call that a war. But you know what? As that westward expansion was going on, that manifest destiny, that jihad, you know one thing that farmers didn't find going from the Atlantic to the Pacific? You know what they didn't find amongst people who had been living there for 15, 16, 17,000 years? You know what these farmers didn't find in their manifest destiny sweep, the genocidal sweep across the continent going west? What they didn't find was prisons. They found no penitentiaries, no jails, no prisons. No prisons. And you know what? They found it was a multitude of nations. Diversity, a multitude of nations. not just one. No prisons. And here we got, a story. Former prison guard charged with illegal possession of hamburgers. And if he gets convicted, where is he going to go? Where is this guy going to go? What is your culture going to do with him? You put him in a cage, right? Put him in a cage, because that's what you do. That's all that your culture has got. That's all that civilized culture, that's your only answer to socially undesirable behavior. Put people in cages. Or just kill them. Put them in a cage. This guy, illegal possession of hamburgers. So he had like a hamburger delivery business going on. Look, this is all you got here. Look at this story here. Listen to the story here. This is from metro.co.uk. What's with the British? Why do they got the .co.uk? Got to have an extra dot in there. Mum killed pedophile when she found out he changed name to hide from crimes. This was last month. Sorry, this video isn't available anymore. At the top of the page. Now, we don't need the video. I'm going to read this to you here. A mother who served a jail sentence for killing a man her son said abused them has warned, if you touch children, there has to be consequences. Sarah Sands made the comments as part of a campaign to tighten up laws on ID checks for convicted pedophiles. She was jailed for stabbing Michael Plested 8 times in 2014 after her boys said they were assaulted by him. It later emerged that the neighbor, who residents thought was a friendly face on their East London estate, was hiding a long history of vile crimes. The 77-year-old had changed his name from Robin Moult to avoid detection and had a string of convictions. CCTV images captured Sands wielding a knife and heading to his address, where she told police she had intended to confront him but wound up killing him. All 3 of her sons are now young adults and have waived their legal right to anonymity to recount learning what their mom had done in life during her 7.5-year prison sentence. So, it sounds to me like maybe many of her neighbors might say that she did the community a favor. Was this woman a danger to society? A pedophile abused her children, and she made sure that that would never happen again. And somehow that means she's got to go in a cage. Put her in a cage. It broke a law. We have laws. We write laws. What are all these written laws for if we aren't going to throw people in cages? How was she a danger to society? Seems a very specific kind of person she's dangerous to. But yeah, your only solution, put her in a cage. Deprive these children of their mother. So they had to grow up without their mother. Maybe she felt, that wasn't her plan. It wasn't her plan. It was this crime of passion thing. What? Yeah, what? You have no choice? Because You know, the only thing you can do is put her in a cage. Just cage people up. That's all you got. And so this guy, he might be in a cage for sneaking hamburgers to people in cages. So let's put him in a cage now, right? All right, let's keep scrolling. Okay, listen to this. This is today, December 23rd, 2022. Spending bill leaves out most of the climate change funding Biden sought. So let's just throw money at this, right? Let's burn the planet. And, funding. But we can't even agree on that. Can't even agree on funding. This is so ridiculous. You know, here's the next article. Doomsy happened to scroll across. This is from yesterday, actually. Yesterday's news. Doomsy's going to be doing this daily. I'm going to doom scroll so you don't have to. And I hope to give you a refreshing spin on this stuff. Look at this headline. Or listen to this headline. Judge questions San Francisco tactics in homeless sweeps. And then there's a picture, a photo of a city street, presumably San Francisco. It really could be any of these big cities on the West Coast. Los Angeles, Portland, San Francisco, Seattle. Where you just see abject poverty. Just people just maximum struggling to get by, poverty. Right next to billions of dollars worth of infrastructure. This article says, a judge in federal court Thursday questioned San Francisco's tactics in homeless encampment cleanups, suggesting the city is not following its own policies of offering shelter beds to people being asked to leave a public area. Yeah, you can't live in a public area. You can't just be there. You got to leave. You know, so this is California. And we were talking a little bit ago about the eradication of non-farmers everywhere on Earth. That murdering being done by farmers. And how farmers, as they were sweeping west, how they found no prisons. No prisons. Prisons moved west. The building of prisons went from the East Coast to the West Coast as farmers went from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's how prisons got from the Atlantic all the way across North America to the Pacific. That's how prisons got there. Farmers doing that. You know what else they brought? Homelessness. Homelessness. That's civilized culture. People lived in California millennia. Homelessness was not a social ill. Nobody was ever saying, oh, these people, they can't be staying here in public. There wasn't all the excessive suffering. So much excessive suffering. That's really what the civilized culture is all about. Poll. Here's another article. Oh, this is a couple days ago. Poll. The headline says, poll. Most Americans now see homeless people in their area every week. Most Americans now see homeless people in their area every week. Why do you think that civilized culture like must go on no matter the cost? I mean, talk about fail. This is the biggest fail ever. It's a 10 to 12,000 year old failure. Failing so bad now that it's starting to hit the fan. The shit has always been flying. As soon as Cain started killing Abel there in the Fertile Crescent, that shit was flying. It's hitting the fan now. This was never a problem in California. People lived here 17,000 years. North America. Maybe even longer than that. Depends on the archaeologists or the anthropologists you talk to. A full 54% of Americans now say they see homeless people in the area where they live at least once a week. And the same number, 54%, say they support building more affordable housing in their area to help address the issue. You know, maybe it's just not working out for a lot of people. Maybe building more affordable housing. Really? You're going to do that again? That's the solution, right? Something affordable, right? It's got to make financial sense, right? That's the problem. That's the problem. It comes down to numbers and figures and green rectangular pieces of paper, or just, I don't know, the marks in a electronic ledger somewhere, right? You don't have to print money anymore. Affordable housing is the how about let's not make it a crime. Does homelessness have to be a crime? Maybe people need help, but also, the affordable housing, everyone's got to live the same exact way, right? That's just how it is in civilized culture. Either way, you're failing. These people either can't or won't. If they can't, civilized culture sucks. Obviously. If they won't, civilized culture also sucks. Because you want to blame it on them? Where's the, if they have the ability, but they won't, they don't have the willingness, they don't have the motivation, your culture sucks. It just does. Well, it should be, these people are not getting with the program. And when is it ever going to happen? When is the program ever going to be so great that they're going to get with it? Ridiculous. Look at this. Did I mention this yesterday? Excuse me. I think I may have. This is the Forever Chemicals. This headline from the New York Times. Forever Chemicals, no more? PFAS are destroyed with this new technique. So they're talking about these forever chemicals that are in the atmosphere, in Earth's atmosphere now. I shouldn't say the atmosphere because I happen to be in a different atmosphere, or at least above an atmosphere. Actually, I'm between planets right now. I should make my way to one of them. Let me see here. If you just be patient with Doomsy for one moment, because I'm right in the middle of some interstellar hijinks. I got to make my way some planet surface, I think, so I don't get mugged out here, or hijacked, or carjacked, or it's not always the safest galaxy where I'm at. So anyway, so we're talking about this article yesterday, I think. So all rain everywhere on Earth now is poison. Yeah, poison. It's toxic. You can't you can't drink it. You shouldn't drink it. You're gonna get sick. It's gonna make you ill. It's gonna F you up. Rainwater. No matter where you go on planet Earth, no matter where you are, if you're drinking rainwater, you're drinking these extremely harmful chemicals. They will just mess you up. Okay, so that's the situation you got. And here's this article. It says forever chemicals no more. These PFAS PFAS are destroyed with this new technique. The harmful molecules are everywhere, but chemists have made progress in developing a method to break them down. Oh, okay, so screw all the other creatures that the rain is falling on, because we got some fancy new filtration technique or some way to purify the water we're going to drink. You going to make that for all the squirrels? You make that for the chipmunks? You're just going to, just let the birds drink whatever. The crows and the sparrows. Forget about armadillos. No more badgers. The wolves. Yeah, what? They only have the same kind of muscle tissues and bones and everything that we do, but it's not going to affect them. It's not going to. The fact that we've made the rain poison. We got a solution for that, right? That's what you think. That's civilized culture right there. It's ridiculous. Oh, good news. Good news, everybody. This is a Professor Farnsworth thing, right? Good news, you can well, maybe it's good news for whoever has, this technology. But even then, how is that good, you get to drink good water, all the other stuff doesn't. But when all the other stuff dies, is that really the kind of planet you want to be living on? So how is this good news? You're just going to keep doing what you're doing, right? Because you don't know any, because you think civilized culture is the bee's knees. You think it's the be all end all be all of what humanity's all about. It's not. You know what civilized means? Civilized, it means war, and it's just a sound. It's nothing special. It's nothing superior. It's nothing great. It's nothing that should last. It's just a sound that refers to your warmongering, pyramid-building culture. That's it. But of course, your cultural mythology makes you want to think that it's the greatest thing ever. And because it is based on a delusion of grandeur, you got these little gadgets, these little the smartphones or whatever, the palms of your hands, reinforce that delusion of grandeur, that you're made in the image of gods, and that the planet is yours to conquer, even though you're punished for conquering it. You're ordered to conquer the planet by the gods, and then you're punished for doing so. Yeah, go read Genesis. It's whacked. The start of civilized culture. Here's a story. Listen to this headline. Canadian polar bears near bear capital dying at fast rate. If polar bears can't live on Earth, you really think that you're going to make it? Polar bears, this is a paragraph from the article. Polar bears are not only critical predators in the Arctic. For years before climate change began affecting people around the globe, they were also the best known face of climate change. Researchers said the concentration of deaths in young bears and females in western Hudson Bay is alarming. It's alarming. Let's make this text bigger. And I'll repeat it for the podcast. Since the 1980s, the number of bears in the region has fallen by nearly 50%, the authors found. The ice essential to their survival is disappearing. Disappearing. It's alarming. But you know what? Well, not going to call that a war. No. Not even Putin will call that a war. Right? The genocide happened recently on North America. That genocide? Not a war. Manifest destiny translates directly into jihad, holy war. Manifest destiny, oh, no, that's not a war. That's progress, right? That's what your culture calls the murder of a dozen million women and children. It's progress, right? Because they're not farmers. So they're not like real humans, according to civilized culture. So that's not war. So why would wiping out polar bears, why would that be considered war? Putin said Ukraine's a war. Now it's official, right? Now other Russians can say it's a war. War. There's always war. You're always waging war. This guy's such a dick. Wouldn't even let people call. It was obviously a war. But, Doomsy's here to tell you there's a lot more war going on than what you're willing to call. Putin's not willing, until now, Putin wasn't willing to call the invasion of Ukraine a war. What are you going to be willing to call what's happening to polar bears? Other animals? That not a war to you? We looked at this headline yesterday. Animals are running out of places to live. Animals are running out of places to live. I got news for you. Doomsy's got some news for you. You're an animal. You're all animals. Humans are animals. This article, we looked at it yesterday. Look, might as well look at it today. Here's the first paragraph. Wildlife is disappearing around the world in the oceans and on land. Disappearing. The main cause on land is perhaps the most straightforward. Humans are taking over too much of the planet, erasing what was there before. As I did yesterday, I took issue with this. And so I'm going to say it again today. You're going to hear Doomsy repeat a lot of stuff. This article says humans are taking over too much of the planet. No. Civilized humans are taking over too much of the planet. Civilized humans. Let's get specific. Let's be accurate here, because that's the problem. The problem is a culture. It's not a species. And just blame you. Oh, we're intelligent. That's what intelligent beings do. NASA scientists think everything in the universe becomes intelligent, destroys themselves. It's like you all are doing. That's your excuse. Intelligence. So you just want to blame the species. No, the problem is the culture. And that's good news, because you can leave a culture. You can change. You can't rewrite the DNA of 8 billion people. You can't change your species. You can abandon a culture. You have to have other cultures to be in. There's some things you got to do there. Jeez Louise. So I guess that's the news today as far as Doomsy's concerned. I don't know. There's this right here. This headline. Listen to this. Microsoft claims FTC's lawsuit against Activision Blizzard buyout is unconstitutional. Corporations have rights too. That's the headline. Corporations have rights too. So, yeah, let's work on this, right? It's a $69 billion deal the FTC is concerned with. So there's all these lawyers, all these executives, all this energy, all this money, all this time. Meanwhile, animals are running out of places to live. Polar bears aren't able to exist anymore. Meanwhile, I guess this is not going to make some of you older folks happy to hear, but this video game art, it makes me think about blaming Gen X. It's you guys, you Gen Xers. If you want to blame anybody, let's blame you guys, because you were the ones who got the message. You were the ones to first get the message from science. So you were the ones you were growing up, and that's when science was a little bit behind the science fiction, the dystopian science fiction. That kind of stuff. That science was starting to say, yeah, pollution's a problem. Pollution is a problem. In fact, it's a huge problem. That was your generation. You got that message from the scientific community of your culture. 4 billion of you at the time. There's 4 billion of you Gen Xers. 4 billion. Now, in the USA, you were terrorized by the government, like on a monthly basis, maybe a weekly basis. Getting under your desk, worried about nuclear holocaust. And then terrorized with the threat of nuclear war, and then terrorized with dystopia, destruction of the earth due to pollution. And it's happening. It is happening. But why didn't you Gen Xers, who were the first to really get that message growing up, why didn't you do anything about it? Oh, video games. Yeah, that's why. Video games. You're the first kids to have video games. First kids on the planet to have video games. So, you just go to the arcade. Forget about the stories about pollution, destruction. And you made it just huge. It's still huge. I mean, yeah, I'm Doomsy, Gen Y. Yeah, I like video games. I played them. I play them if I can find them in this galaxy or this side of the universe if I can. I'm all for entertainment. People like entertainment. It's natural. Nothing wrong with video games. Oh my goodness, really? You're just... Oh, thanks for the news about everything getting destroyed. Let me just go over here and play some missile command. And that's the escape, right? That's how you stop thinking about that. And then you got articles like this. This is today. The headline from the Sacramento Bee. The problem is too many Americans no longer trust the Supreme Court. The solution is clear. Problem is the solution, huh? So, I'm not even going to read this opinion. They're talking about the Supreme Court and ideological judges and being so large and ideologically diverse, the committee was unlikely to agree on any major recommendations what to do with the Supreme Court. These judges get on there for life. Who are these people? You get these split decisions. It's 6-3 or 5-4 or even 7-2. What? Called opinions, anyways. So the opinion of one person or 5 people or whatever the swing is. That's what's going to determine how 350 million Americans live. Of course. Because that's what civilized culture is about, right? Forcing everyone to live in the same manner. There's no freedom, manifest destiny. What's that freedom? We got freedom. My freedoms. Freedom isn't free. Yeah, it also doesn't exist, pal. Doesn't exist. Why do you think movies... What do you think a movie about you guys being batteries for a robot? How do you think that gets popular? You really think you're all free? Certainly weren't free to hunt and gather. Weren't free to be one of many generations to hunt bison. So this article about the judges. We're talking about terms. Getting these people to retire. What? Look, by the time these people retire, by the time you even get half of the Supreme Court swapped out with new judges, you're well on your way to 3 degrees rise, temperature change, and climate. 3 degrees. You know what happens at 3 degrees? 4 degrees? Between 3 and 5. You know what happens then? 90% of marine life gone. 90%. So, okay, no marine life. You really think a Supreme Court decision is going to matter? to anybody. There's no more marine life. Or when there's 90% of it gone. When 90% of it's gone. Oh, let's just... It's not... You can't legislate your way out of these problems. Civilized culture has no solution for the problems that it creates. It just doesn't. You got to start talking to Gen Z, to Gen Alpha. You got to start talking about how, the stampede needs to slow down. It needs to slow down. So you can eventually hit the brakes and come to a full stop. And then get into doing something else, something sustainable, something with diversity, so that wherever people are, they can get something to work for themselves. As people are. Maybe you don't need prisons. Maybe you don't need judges and lawyers. Maybe you shouldn't have the blanket policy. The only way you can punish people, cage. Throw them in a cage. Put people in cages and then trade them. Sometimes we'll trade them. We got some of your people in our cages, and you got some of our people in your cages. You guys even see how sick civilized culture is? And you think it's special and grand and great, and it must go on no matter what. Why? Why does it need to go on? What, just because you want to have the dream of being a pharaoh? Of sitting on top of some big pyramid? That's what interests you. That justifies everything that's going on. That justifies no more polar bears. It doesn't make sense. You got to start talking to Gen Z and Gen Alpha about this. And that's the most powerful thing you can do, really. It's way more powerful than voting for a president who will hope Supreme Court justices kick the bucket or retire. So they're going to appoint some new judges. Talking to Gen Z, talking to Gen Alpha, that's way, way more powerful than voting. Because I'll tell you this, the government, the politicians, the prime ministers, the billionaires, the pharaohs, they're not leaders. They're not leaders. So there's nothing special they can do. There's nothing that makes them exceptional. They're caught in the same stampede that you're in. And it's basically their job to perpetuate that stampede, to keep it going. The status quo. Oh yeah, with little changes here and there. But, same thing. So I think that's all that Doomsy's got for today. The Doomsy McDoomscroller show. Some of the stuff is just ridiculous. Well, maybe I get to this tomorrow. I don't think so. I think because of the time of year, Doomsy's going to be busy tomorrow. I'll read this headline. One more article. The school that calls the police on students every other day. So, we don't got to read this article. This just talks about how the school, they are quick to dial 911. They get their kids arrested. So it's basically like if you go to this school, if you want to avoid jail time at this school, don't go to school. So doesn't that make it like if you're avoiding school, you're avoiding jail? Doesn't that make school kind of a prison? Isn't school just a detention center where young people go to get bullied, to get abused, to do what? To learn? Yeah, really? They're to learn, huh? People on Earth for 1,000,000 years, no schools. But now you need schools to learn. Somehow, 1,000,000 years of survival in North America. 15, 17,000 years of life, living, dinners, fishing trips, and no schools. No schools, no report cards, no calling police to take this kid from the detention center we call the school, take them to the detention center we call the county jail, or some other lockup, whatever. I don't know. That's the only solution we got on Earth. Or I should say you got. Maybe I say we because I don't know what else to do. I just got questions. Doomsy's got questions. Does not have a whole lot of answers. None really. Well, other than you guys got to start talking. You got to start talking to Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Even Gen X. You Gen Xers who aren't Egyptian crocodiles. If you're not in denial about what's going on, talk. You don't need the governments to lead on this, and you can't depend upon them or wait on them to do it because they are not leaders. And they have no special ability to solve these problems. This is cultural. It has nothing to do with economics or law or so Putin calls it a war. That was the lead headline today in the Doomsy McDoomscroller show. And what do we get from this? He can call it a war. Putin, he finds the time okay, call it a war. But what are you calling? Well, I guess you civilized people, I'm talking about, let's get real specific here because Doomsy used to be an American. Still an Earthling. I think I'll always be an Earthling, no matter how long I'm away from Earth. I don't know. Do I stay an American? Maybe I do. What Putin calls what he's having done in Ukraine, he calls that a war. So what do you call what happened on that continent where you live right now? What do you call what happened there to 12 million women and children that were killed within about a century ago? Within about a century, within a couple centuries, about a century ago, 12 million women and children killed. No, you're not calling that a war. Putin can call this Ukraine a war, but you're just going to call that manifest destiny, and not talk about how that's a direct translation of jihad. My goodness. All right. If you want backstory on Doomsy, you can get it. Go to www.doomsymcdoomscroller.com. That's it for this episode. I don't know where I am, but maybe I need to get off of this planet. It's not all that hospitable. Maybe I'll talk to you tomorrow.